Members of the jury, that concludes the preliminary instructions. I turn the case over for opening statements. State of Florida.
May it please the court.
Ms. Stifler.
Counsel. The Sanctuary neighborhood in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a small residential enclave of nice homes with golf carts and boats in the driveway. But on the night of February 16th, 2022, Sanctuary was anything but that for Jared Bridegan. Instead, Sanctuary Boulevard South was the site of his execution. Jared had just dropped off 2 children that he shared with his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner, at her home at Marsh Inlet, about 2.5 miles north of what would be the site of his death. His ex-wife, Miss Gardner, lived there with her new husband, this defendant, Mario Fernandez. Jared dropped his children off and was on his way home to Nocatee, where he lived with his new wife, Kirsten Bridegan, and their 2 daughters. One of his daughters, 2-year-old Bexley Bridegan, was in the car with him. Minutes after he left Miss Gardner's children safely at her home, he reached Sanctuary Boulevard South, where a tire was laying in the road. A dark residential road surrounded on either side by trees with 2 high curbs on each side, one way south, a tree line, and one way north. He put his vehicle in park, put on his flashers, and got out of his car to move the tire. A figure from the darkness stepped out with a firearm and fired 4 10-millimeter bullets, 2 of which went into the vehicle, the passenger compartment, inches from where 2-year-old Bexley Bridegan was strapped in her car seat. 2 of those bullets went into Jared Bridegan. He ended up face down on the pavement of that cold, dark road. He lay there, and Bexley Bridegan remained strapped in her car seat, a seat designed to keep her safe, now held her unable to move for nearly 7 minutes until anybody arrived. Due to his injuries, Jared could not get up and he could not reach her. Every parent's worst nightmare. To die not knowing if any of those bullets had hit his daughter. To die not knowing if she was safe. The person who shot Jared disappeared into the night. There were no witnesses other than Bexley. Nothing. 7 minutes after those gunshots, vehicles started to back up behind Jared's stopped vehicle. 2 people, Shane Borgia and Janelle Cruz, happened to be passing through the area. The tire was the trap to get him to stop, to get him to get out of the car, to leave him vulnerable and exposed. That tire was as much the murder weapon that killed Jared Bridegan as the firearm that fired those bullets. So the surveillance clip from police, the figure in the night, the audio of a pattern of gunshots, bang, 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 steady, consistent. All of it combined that night to let the police know what they were dealing with here was not random. This was intentional. This murder was personal. So the question that night for police, who in the world wanted Jared Bridegan dead? Who had the motive? Who would benefit from his death? And over their investigation for years, that answer, and the reason that you are all here in court today, Shanna Gardner, his ex-wife, and her new husband, this defendant, Mario Fernandez. As Mr. Mizrahi told Last week, during jury selection, the state of Florida has charged Mario Fernandez with 2 crimes: first-degree murder, premeditated murder, and solicitation to commit a capital offense. Now, the burden is on the state of Florida to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. We welcome that burden. We will do that over the next week and a half by presenting evidence in the forms of exhibits and witness testimony. You will have the law as instructed by the court. You have one more thing, equally as important as those two, that you bring with you into this room and back into that deliberation room. That is your common sense. What will become apparent to you very quickly was the same fact that became apparent to those investigators years ago. No one in the world truly wanted Jared Bridegan dead. No one in the world truly benefited from his death. No one in the world truly had motive to kill him, except for Gardner and Fernandez. A little background: it was nasty, it was petty, it was not good on both sides. But Shanna Gardner complained about the custody agreement incessantly. She wanted full custody, particularly because Jared was bringing the children, especially their young daughter, into the church that she now did not want to be a part of, that she now despised. The defendant himself told police after Jared's death that they were seeking full custody, that they wanted full custody, that they would have even been happier with more custody, 60-40 as opposed to the 50-50. The defendant, after Jared Bridegan's death, told police that the kids were better off without him. And the money. And it caught a blue Ford F-150 with a tan running board driving down Sanctuary an hour before the murder, slowing down and almost appearing to stop at the very site where Jared would be killed an hour later. It caught that car coming back up, driving around, and then pulling in to an apartment complex cut, an area called Pablo Hamlet at Cheddar, a street north of the homicide scene in Jacksonville Beach, a street where this blue truck that was seen slowing at the homicide scene and then driving away from the homicide scene shortly after Jared was killed, waited for a period of about 20 minutes before Jared's death. And this street, Cheddar, this Pablo Hamlet area, isn't just anywhere in Jacksonville Beach. It is exactly one street over and directly behind that house in Marsh Inlet where Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez lived. Detectives followed that surveillance of the blue truck. They saw it in front of Jared seconds before his death. It appeared to be moving fast, as if trying to put distance between itself and Jared's vehicle, as if trying to create time, perhaps to lay down a tire and set a trap. That blue vehicle was seen driving north away from the homicide scene after the gunshots. That blue truck was seen before the homicide on surveillance with what appeared to be an object in its bed, consistent with a tire. At 6:41 p.m. on Grande Boulevard, a camera picked up that truck, the tire in the back. At 7:54, minutes after the homicide, that same camera at Grande picked up that truck, this time going north, away from the homicide scene, and that tire was not in the bed of the truck anymore. The detectives felt like this was the first real lead. And lastly, they had the time and place of Jared's death as a clue. Although not physical evidence, that gave them information as well. Because the path that Jared Bridegan took from Marsh Inlet to Sanctuary is a windy path through a residential area. It's a cut through. Unless you live in the neighborhood or are familiar with it, most likely you're not driving that route. And they knew that the tire had not been in the road until moments before Jared's death. So they knew the killer had to have known, one, that Jared Bridegan would be in Jacksonville Beach that night, even though he lived and worked in Nocatee. Two, that he would be driving a black VW Atlas. And 3, that he would be going down Sanctuary at that exact moment, the right time for the killer to execute his plan and execute Jared. And there were not that many people in the world that knew that Jared Bridegan would be in Jacksonville Beach that Wednesday night, February 16th, 2022, at approximately those times. But some people did, including Shanna Gardner and the defendant, Mario Fernandez. Because part of their custody arrangement for this 50-50 parental time sharing was that on the week that the parents did not have the twins, they would get a date night with them. And from that location data, detectives were able to go back to that surveillance they collected, and they were able to identify a black male on camera walking from the homicide scene and walking throughout Jacksonville Beach after the murder. And in that video, they were able to determine that the person had a jacket and a pair of boots that looked very, very, very similar to a jacket and a pair of boots that they collected from 5239 Potomac Avenue belonging to Henry Tenon. They eventually found his truck in the yard of a family friend. Henry Tenon's vehicle. A vehicle that looked very similar to this vehicle before the homicide, driving on Grande Boulevard with a tire in the back bed, leaving the homicide scene after the murder with no tire. Most importantly, they got his DNA. His DNA came back on the steering wheel of this blue vehicle. It came back on those keys that were in his pocket for a Ford F-150, keys that unlocked this vehicle. And Henry Tenon's DNA came back on a swab of the inner rim of that tire at Sanctuary Boulevard South that was put in the road to trap and kill Jared Bridegan. Detectives realized Henry Tenon was the shooter. Although they searched and searched, they found no link between Jared Bridegan, Kirsten Bridegan, the Bridegan family, and Henry Tenon. They found no motive for Henry Tenon to have wanted Jared Bridegan dead. The killer was a stranger to Jared Bridegan. The murder was personal. And this is significant because when John Biggerstaff became a convicted felon and was fired from JSO, he had to surrender his firearms, and he surrendered them to his son, Juan Biggerstaff. One of the firearms that he surrendered was a Glock, older model, 10mm firearm. So detectives investigated. They spoke to Mr. Biggerstaff, they spoke to his son Juan, they tracked down purchase records. They were trying to find this firearm. You will hear from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement expert that if you have shell casings left behind on a scene and you have a firearm, you can test fire it, you can compare those casings, and you can scientifically determine if casings on a scene were fired by a certain gun. So the police obviously wanted to obtain Mr. Biggerstaff's Glock 10mm to see if it was the weapon used to kill Jared Bridegan or not. And they are unable to do that to this day because Mr. John Biggerstaff and his son, Juan Biggerstaff, have forgotten where this firearm is. They just don't know. They can't produce it. They can't tell anyone where it is. We have been unable to find it and to test it to see whether or not that was the firearm used to kill Jared Bridegan. A gun we don't have because the defendant's close friend that he hung out with the day before the murder and the day after the murder can't produce his Glock 10mm firearm. And like Henry Tenon, John Biggerstaff has no connection to Jared Bridegan or to Kirsten Bridegan or to the Bridegan family. You will also hear evidence that when they recovered Henry Tenon's truck, inside the truck were 3 check stubs, still together with numerical markings. And the police were able to go into Henry Tenon's bank records, find those check numbers and see that Henry Tenon, in March and April of 2022, weeks after Jared's death, deposited 3 checks written by Mario Fernandez, the defendant. He deposited a $2,000 check with a subject line landscaping. He deposited a $3,000 check with the subject line keeping up with the roof. And he deposited a $5,000 check written by this defendant to the shooter that said, Kickstarter, good luck, exclamation point, exclamation point. Well, you'll see photos of the house at Potomac. You'll see its roof. You'll see its landscaping. You'll see the state of the home. You'll see Mr. Tenon's bank records and the fact that he was frequently overdrawn on his accounts, that he's a day laborer whose wages are being garnished by the government for back-due child support. You will not hear any evidence from the downloads of Henry Tenon's phones or Google accounts that he ever had a Kickstarter. And you will see very quickly that there are no way these are legitimate payments. You will have Mr. Fernandez's Google download, which contains his business dealings with First Choice Home Rentals as it relates to 5239 Potomac. And you'll see the difference between the legitimate expenditures he's giving to LLCs and air conditioning companies with invoices and estimates and scheduled times and emails versus these checks that just magically appeared out of nowhere for $10,000 to a man who earns $15,000 a year breaking down pallets. These checks were a way to hide money for a murder hidden in plain sight to make it look legitimate, with the hope that Henry Tenon would never be identified and no one would ever look that deep.
You may proceed, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Your Honor. I please the court. Jared Bridegan was murdered. Henry Tenon murdered Jared Bridegan. Let me say that one more time. Jared Bridegan was murdered. And he was murdered by Henry Tenon. There will be no dispute to those facts. No doubt. Mario Fernandez had no desire to murder Jared Bridegan. Mario Fernandez had no motive to murder Jared Bridegan. Mario Fernandez did not benefit from the murder of Jared Bridegan. Simply put, ladies and gentlemen, Mario Fernandez had no involvement in the murder. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the evidence the state has to put forth to you. They have to prove each of those elements, just like Mr. Dreiser said in jury selection when he gave a hypothetical about the links in a chain. And if none of those links are actually established, then the whole chain falls apart. That's what we believe the evidence will fail to show, are those links in the chain. They offered him immunity, but that will be his testimony. Both of these men have been offered full immunity from prosecution in a homicide that has no statute of limitations. And their testimony will be, we have not seen those guns since 2017, because once he picks them up from his sister, he then has them. He's at UNF, Juan Biggerstaff, studying, and he gets recruited to be a police officer in Irvine, Texas. And on his way out of town, with the 16 guns that he doesn't get to keep, he goes to a family friend's house, Fred Barton, takes them in bags and in gun boxes, and puts them in a closet. And both of those men's testimony will be, that is the last time they saw those guns. And the state will want you to believe this is part of some sort of conspiracy. John Biggerstaff has never been arrested. Juan Biggerstaff has never been arrested. They have been offered full immunity from prosecution in a first-degree murder case. And their testimony will be 6 5 years before the homicide was the last time we saw that gun. And FDLE will say, I cannot say that it's that gun. All I can say is it's a 10 millimeter Glock, and there are thousands of them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, February 16th, 2022. It was a terrible day. There are a lot of people in this courtroom and a lot of people watching. That day destroyed the lives of so many people. We will never, ever say otherwise. What Henry Tenon did that night was unconscionable. And he will be held to account for that at a later date. The state has brought in evidence. Giant boots, car keys, jackets of Henry Tenon. He destroyed the life of Jared Bridegan, his wife, his family. He's destroyed the life of Mario Fernandez, who's been accused. There will be no evidence submitted to you that will connect those chains that he had any involvement in what Henry Tenon did. Jared Bridegan came and picked up his children for his date night. You'll see video of this. It'll be heartbreaking knowing where that ends. He takes the children to a Jacksonville Beach barbecue place called the Bearded Pig. They're there for about 45 minutes. He drives them through Wendy's to get them Frosties. He drops them back off. You'll see videos. You'll watch them walk through the parking lot. And then you're going to also see videos of that blue truck owned by Henry Tenon, which will not be in dispute. These are little snapshots of all those videos that you will see. But what you will not see is Mario Fernandez. You'll see videos of that blue truck driving past people walking down the street. This thing gets blasted over the media. They are looking for any witness they can. There will be no witness, no evidence, nothing to suggest Mario Fernandez is in that truck. What you will see from 7:46 to 9:14, 7:46 is just shortly after dropping the twins off. You'll see the blue truck, as Ms. Stifler said, trying to give some distance. She's driving down 5th Avenue South through Sanctuary, turns into Fairway Lane. And you'll see that black VW Atlas driven by Jared Bridegan with his daughter in the back seat. And you'll see a muzzle flash. And you'll see a figure, which will be Henry Tenon. And you'll see video of him walking all the way from the homicide location down 9th Street, which is South Beach Parkway, and then turns into 9th, all the way down to Shetter, up Shetter, right past the police station. Ms. Stifler talked about coincidences. They do happen. And you know why we know they happened? Because a terrible, ironic fact that you will see is that as Henry Tenon is walking past the police station after this murder, Kirsten Bridegan and I believe her mother show up at the police station. They are caught in the same frame. So, ladies and gentlemen, you will see that coincidences do happen. Mario Fernandez can know a wrongdoer and not be a wrongdoer, which is a journal found in the truck of Henry Tenon. And the state said, oh, well, there's a check and it says Kickstarter, good luck. But we didn't find a Kickstarter account. Kickstarter just means that somebody's giving money to help kickstart somebody's business. Henry Tenon is a worker. Mario Fernandez has hired him to do work, not murder, tree work, roof work, landscaping, tile work. You're going to have Mr. Tenon's business plan because he wanted to be his own boss. You'll hear from his girlfriend. You'll hear from other people that say Henry wanted to start his own business. He wanted to do his own pallet business. He was tired of working for somebody else. He wanted to work for himself. And he wrote out a business plan that you'll be able to take back there and go through page by page with prices and what he anticipates his revenue to be. Mario Fernandez, who had at the time access to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, gave money to a guy that had helped him around his own house and invest in his business that he wanted to start. That's what the checks say. That's what the poll cameras will show. You'll never see any tie to a homicide. And after that last check, you'll never see any other payments. They want you to believe that the evidence is going to show he got hired on credit and took 3 checks. They were hiding in plain sight. Mario Fernandez's name is on the check. The business, the LLC he has with his wife is at the top. It's got his account number. It's written to Henry Tenon. It's a contract for work. He goes to jail. They go to Potomac. They notify Mr. Ordway that Henry Tenon has been arrested in connection to a homicide. They search Potomac. These are photographs from evidence technicians. You'll be able to look at them. How they determine these are the boots, that's for you guys to figure out. Because you're going to see all sorts of different things they recovered from that residence, including the lease agreement between Jeremy Ordway and Mario Fernandez, signed on January 27th, when Henry Tenon, the so-called paid-for murderer, is getting evicted from the home of the guy that the state wants you to believe is paying him to commit a murder. So if your mind is, well, maybe the truck was scrubbed and that's why they didn't find any evidence, it's what the state will want you to believe. They're going to tell you it was so disgusting that when they pulled items like this book out, they would shake it and there would be things from rodents, from bugs, and it was disgusting. And they vacuum it with special vacuums, with special filters, looking for hairs and DNA. Mario Fernandez isn't like me. He's got a head full of hair. They didn't find one hair, one fingerprint, DNA, skin cell. You will carry it with you back there. We talked about it in jury selection. The defendant has entered a plea of not guilty. This means you must presume or believe the defendant is innocent. Right now, innocent. This presumption stays with the defendant as to each material allegation in the indictment through each stage of this trial, unless it has been overcome by the evidence to the exclusion and beyond a reasonable doubt. To overcome the defendant's presumption of innocence, the state has the burden of proving the crime with which the defendant is charged was committed, and the defendant is the person who committed the crime. The law does not require proof beyond all doubt on the part of the jury before it returns a verdict of guilty. A mere possible, speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt is not a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt is not a guess or mere conjecture. Rather, it is based upon the reasoning and common sense after careful consideration, impartial consideration of all the evidence in this case. A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflict in the evidence, or the lack of evidence. If, after careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence, you have a reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the accused, it is your duty to find him not guilty. On the other hand, if after careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence, you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty, it is your duty to find the defendant guilty. It is to the evidence introduced at trial and to it alone you are to look for that proof. You have to be convinced that he did each element of each charge. Otherwise, as you stated in jury selection, it is your duty, it is the law that you would return a verdict of not guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, you have paid attention to me. You've paid attention to the state. You sacrificed all last week. In the next 2 weeks, we don't want to waste any more of your time. Thank you so much for your attention.
I cannot recall.
Were you right up close to it, far away? I understand you don't have to give me an approximation, but
Pretty far away.
when you saw the vehicle with its flashers on, I want you to tell the jury what happened next.
So I stopped the vehicle. Shane had exited the vehicle to go see if they needed help. So he got down. I remained in my vehicle, and then he walks up asking if help was needed. And then I see him walking back towards my vehicle, and he says to call 911. And at some point, he says there's a guy on the ground. And so as I was starting to call 911, I had exited my vehicle, and he took a turn around the backside of the victim's vehicle to check if there was, any other things going on, And he found the little girl.
Okay. I'm going to go back and ask you a few questions. You mentioned that you made a 911 call.
Yes.
Prior to today's trial, did you have the opportunity to listen to your 911 call?
Yes.
And I'm going to play that for you now.
JSL transfer.
Hi, yes, I'm calling. There's a guy in the middle of the road on America Avenue.
And I'm pausing it. This is, for the record, State's Exhibit 2. Ms. Cruz, is that your voice?
Yes.
Let me inquire. Can the jurors hear that okay? Okay.
I'm not sure if somebody else caught it in. Hello?
What's he doing?
He's, the car is open, and he's laying on the ground. I'm not sure what.
We're out on America.
Right when you take a left on America going out, I believe to Sanctuary, maybe?
What kind of car is it? Is he by?
It's a black SUV. Is that a Nissan Toyota? Is that a Nissan Toyota? Is it only him on the ground?
What's he doing?
He's just laying there. I'm not sure. He's having a heart attack or something. And he has a little kid in the car. My husband right now is holding her. She was crying. So I think it's just him and this little girl.
Okay. And you think it's a medical emergency?
It might be. It looks like he stopped the car and just laid on the ground on the road.
Is he bleeding? Can you talk to him, or?
Is he awake? Is he conscious? Is he conscious, or he's unconscious?
Unconscious? Okay. Let me get
Yes.
fire. I've got officers on the way.
Ms. Cruz, when you made that 911 call, did you see anybody lying on the ground?
No, I did not.
And what you were relaying to the operator, is that what Shane, Mr. Borja, is relaying to you?
That is correct.
You mentioned in the 911 call that your husband brought a child to you.
That is correct.
Can you describe for the jury her appearance when he brought her to you?
She was shaking. She was panting as if she's been crying. She was very worried about her dad. She kept asking, she was telling us that her dad is hurt on the ground, along those lines, and asking if the police was going to help her daddy.
How old did she appear to be to you?
To me, she was between 2 to 3 years old.
And what did you do to comfort her?
So when Shane brought her to me, I took her from him, and I grabbed a blanket that I had in the back of my vehicle. I wrapped her in it, and we just remained in my vehicle till the detectives came to retrieve her from me.
So you mentioned that she made some statements. I want to ask and go through those specifically.
Yes, ma'am.
Did she say if she had seen or heard anything?
She heard a boom.
And then was she was mentioning her daddy. Did you take that to mean that the man on the ground was her father?
That is correct.
What did she say specifically about what she saw?
Along the lines of, I can say something along the lines of, my daddy's on the ground, my daddy's hurt, and is the police gonna help my daddy? That's pretty much what she kept repeating.
And were you asking her questions, and was she able to respond to your questions?
That is correct. I was trying to distract her from the whole scene.
What else did you ask her?
I asked her where her mom was, and she replied with, at home with my baby sister. I asked her her name, how old she was, and she had some like dirty mouth, And I asked her, I said, what did you eat? She's like, I had ice cream.
Quite a ways. I'd say like maybe 2 bus lengths.
Okay. And as you approached the victim's vehicle, were you alone when you first approached?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you saw someone lying on the ground. Can you describe for the jury how he was lying, his position?
Yeah, he was face down, like facing towards the driver's side of his vehicle. He was lying motionless in a pool of blood.
Was the driver's door open like it is in this picture?
Yes.
And were the flashers or hazard lights on?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned now that you saw blood. Can you describe for the jury what you initially thought you were coming across?
Yeah, at first I thought it was he was changing his tire or something, needed help, so I got down to try and help. And then when I saw the blood, that's when I thought that there was a car accident.
And did you look around to see if there were any other cars or people in the area that could have been involved?
Yes, that's when I started walking around the vehicle to see if there was another car in the woods, see, if maybe someone else needed help, but I couldn't find anything.
You didn't see any other cars or any other people?
No, ma'am.
And then what did you do next?
I was just trying to figure out what's going on. I already knew the police were coming, so I was just trying to see, if there was an accident, like I said, and if someone needed help. And then I walked around the vehicle, and that's when I saw the little girl in the back seat.
Showing you it's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 35. Is this the interior of the victim's vehicle?
Looks like. I believe so.
Did you remove the little girl from a car seat in the back of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to removing her from the vehicle, you mentioned that you were calling out to the man on the ground. Did you hear any response from him while you were calling out?
I didn't get no response, but I did hear, the blood and, gurgling of, yeah.
He was not able to answer your questions or give you any information, though.
No, I knew that, I knew he wasn't there anymore,
When you got the little girl out of the car, can you describe to the jury what her demeanor was like?
She was, panting, and she seemed very in shock, and she knew something happened to her father. She was saying, my daddy on the ground. I couldn't really make it out, but I knew she's trying to explain to me.
And what did you do with the little girl?
I just grabbed her, it was my only instinct was just to grab her, and I just held her and...
northbound Sanctuary Boulevard, woods, and then you've got homes on American Avenue.
So you get out of your patrol vehicle?
Yes, I got to the scene. I noticed Jared on the ground. His flashers were on. I get to the scene. I see Jared lying there. Jared's face down in a pool of blood. I sort of get focused on him. Our initial response, we're trained to make sure that that the scene is safe. Make sure the scene is safe. Make sure the scene is not active. That's our first thing. We've got an overload of sensory when we get to a scene like this because we don't know what we have, and we're trying to figure it out very, very quickly to get the scene safe and figure out and integrity of this case. So I initially got out of the car, thought to myself originally, hey, this is kind of a funny place. where somebody would commit suicide. I initially thought it was somebody who got out of the car and shot himself, the way the body was situated, the way he was laying, and the pool of blood around his head.
So I just want to make sure the jury heard this right. He was face down?
He was face down, and I say face down, he was face down on one cheek or the other. He wasn't face down on his forehead. He was face down on I don't remember which cheek it was, but one cheek or the other cheek.
Meaning his stomach, his belly button was on the...
His belly, he was prone on the ground with his belly on the ground.
And having responded to this scene, were you aware of gunshots? Did anyone report gunshots in the area?
That I remember was probably third or fourth call that we received from our dispatch, and that kind of made everything that was going on make sense. From all the different kind of calls we got, that was where we were like, okay.
I've dropped the mic a dozen times.
It's still on? Did I break it? Okay. When Jack's Fire Rescue, when they come out and they pronounce somebody deceased on a scene, out of dignity for the person, they usually put a sheet over the deceased body just to cover him up out of respect. This sheet was over his body, but his left hand was still out of the sheet, and I noticed the ring on his left finger. I noticed his wedding ring on his left finger hit me in a way that an emotional way for me. I'm married 30 years. I saw that ring, and I just thought, wow, we're about to give somebody the worst information of their life.
Okay. Did you also, during this process, notice the pockets of Mr. Bridegan and whether or not he had been turned out? In other words, was there any sign of a robbery?
There was no sign of a robbery. I believe his phone was still in the car. I believe his wallet was attached to his phone. His pockets were not turned out. There was no indication. I don't think any time, as when I was there, I thought that robbery was even part of this incident. Didn't know what happened, but I didn't think robbery didn't take a priority on this one.
So at that point, you see the multiple shell casings. It's a homicide. Someone's calling the phone, because you mentioned the phone was in the car. Do you recall that someone kept repeatedly calling Mr. Bridegan's cell phone that was in the car?
There are on this is almost 5 years ago, and there are memories that kind of come and go, but there are very few vivid memories I have of this case. They were all kind of emotional. One being the ring on the finger, and two being when Kirsten started calling. When I saw on the infotainment center, the center console, where you have your music and all that stuff, somebody calls, their name pops up. I saw Kirsten's name pop up. And then probably 3 or 4 minutes later, I saw the name pop up again. It stuck with me that her name is very close to my wife's name. So I kind of read that as my wife's name. So it touched me in a way. And then as the evening or as the scene progressed, the frequency of those calls came in more and more, almost like you can tell it was a panicky, where are you? You should be home by now. What's going on?
But typically we tried to keep those separate.
Was there ever a point in time where the co-parenting relationship was improved or better, or was it generally always tense and difficult?
There were little moments here and there where it's kind of oddly calm, like you're just kind of waiting for something else to drop. But I would say the vast majority was pretty tense.
When you had your own children, starting with Bexley and then London, did that cause any kind of improvement or difference in the relationship with your co-parents?
I personally felt that it made it worse. I felt like after that, the things that my stepkids would come home saying, it kind of intensified as far as like the negativity they were hearing.
And to be fair, some of that negativity was also coming from your side towards them.
Yeah, we did not like each other.
Okay. Tell me about you mentioned the custody agreement. Was that something that everybody was on board for, 50-50 custody?
No. There was one specific thing that was a pretty contentious point where Shanna had wanted to allow overnights with step-parents, specifically Mr. Fernandez, without her present, and we just were not comfortable with that and fought back really hard. Even saying, like, I will not get alone overnights with the kids.
You went on date night. Did Jared typically take that Atlas?
Yes.
So when Jared left for date night, what did you do that evening?
I was at home. I put our daughter London to bed. My parents were over that night. We were watching some sort of show after she was in bed. Just normal evening at home.
Did you have any communication with your husband that night while he was at date night?
I did, and AB was also texting me from his phone during date night.
Did you know where they were going to eat dinner that night?
I believe AB told me.
While she was there, she let you know what restaurant they were at?
Yeah, I believe so.
But you did not know prior to Jared leaving what their plans were that evening?
No, he didn't typically make plans ahead of time.
So it's just spur of the moment, what he was feeling like.
Yeah.
Did you know what time he picked the children up based on that group text that you shared with Mr. Bridegan, Mr. Fernandez, and Ms. Gardner?
Yeah, there would have been a here text in that group chat.
And while you were getting texts from Mr. Bridegan and from AB, was there anything unusual in their communications that caused you to be nervous or upset or think something was wrong prior to the actual homicide?
Not at all.
Did anything to you seem out of the ordinary for a typical date night?
No.
And at some point, did you actually call and speak to your husband that evening?
Yeah, so I was on the phone with my brother, and Jared called me, and I three-way merged it. We all chatted for a little bit, and then my brother hung up to let Jared and I talk. And I remember Bexley telling me, "Mommy, we got ice cream."
So just to pause you right there.
Yeah.
When he called you, do you remember what time of night it was?
It was after 7:45 when he would have dropped the twins off at their mom's house.
And was there anybody else that you could hear in the car besides Jared Bridegan and your daughter Bexley?
No.
Were you on speakerphone?
The car phone, yes.
And just normal conversation. Was anything about that conversation unusual to you? Did Jared seem upset? Did he seem fearful? Had you have any indication that something happened out of the ordinary that date night?
No, everything seemed fine. Bexley seemed happy. She got ice cream. Like, everything seemed normal.
And during the conversation, tell us how the conversation ended. Without necessarily saying what was said, how did you get off the phone with Jared?
It was strange, and I remember feeling like it was strange because after I was like, all right, well, love you, we'll see you soon, he was just quiet, and I was like, okay, it was kind of weird, and hung up, but it was like a pause and just quiet at the end.
Do you remember what time around you got off the phone with him?
I mean, it's somewhere in between like 7:45 and 7:52, maybe.
And he had already dropped your stepchildren off and was heading home, presumably to Nocatee. You were expecting him to show up.
Yeah, he had said he was coming home.
Okay, so describe for the jury when you realized that something was not quite right.
Well, I was sitting on the couch with my parents, watching a show, and then, I'd already talked to Jared. He was on his way home. And then the time when he would usually be back passed, and I, didn't think much of it. It's like, okay, maybe hit traffic or something. And then it got a little bit later, and that's when I just had this just feel.
Did you try reaching out to him by texting him or calling him?
Yeah, I texted and called him.
Did he answer or respond?
He did not. And I would give it a little bit. I remember telling my parents, like, something's wrong. And they were trying to reassure me, like, it was probably fine. And I kept calling, and eventually it's, I looked on my phone, like, was there an accident? Like, is there any news report of anything that would have caused them to delay? And I couldn't find anything. Yeah.
So what did you do then?
So then I got in the car. My mom came with me. My dad stayed at the house because our daughter was asleep. And I just decided I was just going to start driving towards the beach where he would have been to see if I could see an accident or anything and find out where they're at.
Were you continuing to call him while you were driving from your home in Nocatee to Jacksonville Beach?
I was calling him from my car phone the entire drive.
Did somebody eventually answer?
Yeah.
Was it Jared?
No.
Was that person a police officer?
Yes, it was.
And after you spoke to that police officer, where did you drive to?
They told me to come to the Jacksonville Beach Police Department, and that's where I drove to.
When you arrived at the police department, did somebody advise you that your husband had been shot and killed on Sanctuary?
No, it was actually quite frustrating because they wouldn't tell me anything. I saw my daughter, and she was okay, but I asked over and over and over, and they would not tell me anything. They just kept asking me questions.
Did the police interview you, so to speak? Did they ask you questions about your background, Jared's background, his plans that night?
Yep, they asked me what he was wearing, if he had any tattoos. They asked me a lot of questions. I just remember just getting very frustrated that they were asking me things and not answering anything that I was asking of them.
Eventually, were you notified that night that your husband had died?
I was.
And that not only had died, but had been killed?
Yes, I was told that he had been shot.
Did the police give you any information about evidence or leads or suspects that evening?
No, not at all.
Did they ask you any questions about what you thought could have happened that evening?
I don't recall them asking me that, but I offered up my own ideas of just my gut instinct, but I don't remember them asking me. I don't recall if they asked me that night.
When you say you offered up, did you direct them to potentially investigate specific individuals?
I did.
And who were those?
Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez.
I'm showing you a photograph that's been marked and entered into evidence. This is an individual by the name of Henry Tenon, State's Exhibit 200. Do you recognize this person?
Only from when he was arrested.
And I'm sorry, that was a bad question on my part. Prior to your involvement, prior to Mr. Tenon's arrest in this case, prior to Jared's death, had you ever seen this person before?
No.
Had you ever been to an address at 5239 Potomac Avenue in Northwest Jacksonville, Florida?
No.
Had you and Jared ever had any work done on your home in Nocatee, like landscaping, tile work, roofing, or anything doing with pallets?
No.
I'm showing you what's been marked and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 135. Other than in regards to this case, prior to your husband's death, had you ever seen this vehicle before?
I don't believe so.
Have you ever had work done at your house or someone visit you at your home that had a vehicle similar to this one?
No.
And prior... Mrs. Bridegan, this is going to be quick. Mr. Dreiser just showed you a clerk of court's record, Defense Exhibit 1A, and he showed you a portion where the case was closed because someone had filed a filing that Jared had died. Did you file that?
I did not.
Did Ms. Gardner file it?
I believe so.
In order to file that, did Ms. Gardner reach out to you to request that you give her a copy of Jared Bridegan's death certificate?
She did.
How soon after his death?
Sure.
What is your expert medical opinion about the cause of Jared Bridegan's death?
My expert opinion is that the cause of death is multiple gunshot wounds.
And what is your expert medical opinion about the